Bonnie, and this is the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter, where we lay the cards on the table and talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So shuffle your deck, pull up a chair, and join us at the Tarot Table. Welcome to the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about the threes in tarot. So we've already covered the aces and the twos, and now we're on to the threes. So how we're going to structure this episode is we're going to talk about the general meaning of what the threes mean in general, and then we're going to go into each suit and talk about the three in each suit. So what does the number three mean in general? You could think of it as the result of a union. So we have the one, we have the two, and those two come together to form the three. And if you think about it in terms of like a family dynamic, you have the parent. So you have the one, they come together, they form a pair, a couple, and then they have a child. So the energy of the three is like that child energy. So you can think about that as creation. It took creation to create the child. You can also think about it from this playful perspective. So quite often a three will be really enthusiastic, have great communication skills, and it's the collaboration coming together. It also has the energy of expansion and growth. So for me, a great reminder about the three is like a child. So a child grows, a child is created, a child is youthful and happy and excited. So a lot of that energy plays within the energy of the threes and how they relate to the suits in tarot. So that's sort of a general overview. Peter, what would you add to that if we're just talking about the threes in general?
In general, it's funny because when I think of the threes, I actually think the threes are the first time that we introduce complexity to the minor arcana. Because as you mentioned, you've got kind of the one, then you introduce the two, you have the concept of the other. When I think of the three, I actually think, I love your analogy of kind of thinking of a family with child. I think about it almost from a mathematical perspective and think, we have a point, we have a line, and then for the first time with the three, we actually introduce an environment. We create something in three dimensional. It has length, it has width, and it has height. And I think depending on the suit, this is where we think of things like other people in our environment. And then I think of, our environment can be harmonious. We can share when we see the threes, but with a three, we can also feel outnumbered. We can be 2 against 1. Our interaction can be in conflict. The other thing that a three does is it introduces a perspective for the first time. Like from an artistic perspective, that third dimension provides us with the concept of like up, down, behind, in front. Like we need 3 dimensions to give us perspective. So I don't know that I guess when I think of the threes, I think of the threes as being sort of the first of the more complex pip cards, like of the more complex ace to 10 cards. And I guess to summarize, they represent the first time that we sort of step away from nothing, like from a point or from a line. I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting too philosophical.
No, we like that.
Yeah, there's a shock, right? Well, Peter, you're getting, contemplative and philosophical. I think that the threes and at some point in time, we'll do an episode on the fours and kind of, to me, I always think the fours are almost easy. Whereas the threes, and I'll probably get into that a little bit with each of the different suits, is there is a level of complexity depending on what energy is being highlighted by that concept of three. So, again, the idea of there being something else out there. To me, I guess that's what the threes represent. It's that idea of something else, the other point in a triangle. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's
for sure.
Maybe I have a hard time with the threes because I make them more complicated than they need to be.
Sometimes we do that, right? Life can be simple, and it's so simple that we overcomplicate it.
I
I do that a lot.
I know, but we'll try. I'll try and you want me to start with the three of wands?
Sure.
I'll try and make it, as simple as I can. So
Okay, go for it.
if we do the idea of the three of wands and we think about that idea
Mm,
of perspective, and even you talk about the idea of creativity. I always think, that the three of wands though isn't it's hard to find creativity inside that card. It's a card that looks
mm,
like it wants to move, that it kind of wants to be out there. And then I wonder whether or not if the concept of, of wands, of fire, of passion, of movement almost, comes into conflict with the idea of harmony, of the I,
mm,
that idea of creation. And I think the Three of Wands, it's one of the reasons why the Three of Wands almost invites us to do that final pause before we move forward in a project, before we move forward in our greater goal or our greater purpose. And we sort of, take a look like that Three of Wands, the guy standing there, the person standing there holding on to the wand, kind of looking out into the landscape. That what they're trying to do is gain that perspective that the three brings, and
mhm.
they're almost moving against the grain of the energy of fire because they're like, I want to go, I gotta go, I gotta go. And the three is saying, not quite yet, not quite yet. I don't know. That's always how I perceive the three of wands, and that that's maybe unique, maybe a unique perspective. What about you? How would you take
I
a
do
look at that?
like that perspective.
Well, thank you.
I'm definitely going to keep that in my back pocket now, as a new way of looking at that card. When I see the Three of Wands, I see it as a an opportunity for like potential or like possibility is there. So again, when I think about the tarot, I think about the cards that came before that. So if we think about the suit of wands, the ace, we have this opportunity.
Mhm.
In the two, we decide we're going to go for it. We make that decision. And now in the three, it's like we're in this space now where we've made that decision. We've probably started planning, taking some action steps. And now in the three, we're sort of waiting for that opportunity to come in. So yeah, you're right. Quite often somebody is looking out into the water. A ship could be coming
Mhm.
or it could be going, depending on your how, you're looking at that. But I always see it that you're ready.
Mhm.
So when the three shows up for me, I'm like, oh, okay, now is the time. So it either maybe hasn't come yet, but you're in a position where you're ready to take that opportunity to apply yourself or whatever it is. So in the Light Seers deck by Chris Ann, it has a surfer. So she's waiting on the beach and she's got her surfboard, and it's almost like she's waiting for that wave to come so she can go and ride the wave. So I also love that perspective of that card. It's like you're ready. So
Mhm.
maybe I can see what you're saying about like you're not moving, but
Right.
you're like that anticipation is
Yeah.
there, that the energy is around you. Like now we've got three wands, energy is building, and like hold on
Yeah.
because your opportunity is coming, right? Like you're going to be
Yeah.
ready to ride that wave or see your ship coming in with the cargo that you've been waiting for,
Yeah. And
whatever
and
that is.
and I think the only difference that is I see that more like from the elemental perspective. I see that like that's exactly how I would see it, but I also see that perspective of that not being comfortable for the suit
Uh,
of wands. That the wands don't like waiting for a wave or waiting for the ship coming in. They sure as
right.
hell don't like the fact if the ship is already gone, they'd be standing there going, "Whoa, whoa, wait for me. What do you mean you're gone already? I was supposed to be on that ship heading out onto the adventure." That's the only thing. I love that idea though, the idea of potential. And I forgot about that. I forgot about the surfer image in the in that deck because it's a very like it's a great image that shows the same idea of the Three of Wands. So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the groundwork is done and now you're waiting, or
Mhm.
like, or even broadening your horizon too, right? Like if you think
Mhm.
about both of those cards in the horizon, you're like seeing it bigger now. So
Mhm.
could also think about it from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were to use this card in a practical manner, what would you use it for? This one might be tough.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. So I mean, I would probably go to something like intention setting,
Mm,
where if I was in a position, and I'll use actually, yeah, the image that you described, the idea of, I'm in some kind of a situation where I've got my surfboard, and I'm ready for that starting point. I'm ready for the perfect wave to come. I might use that card as an invitation to bring the perfect wave. Or I might present it as a reminder to myself, well, what steps do I need to take to make sure I'm ready when the
mhm,
opportunity presents itself? So it would be, I guess it would be a
mm,
card that um, would help prepare me for the opportunity at whatever point I need that preparation.
mhm.
Visual reminder, writing prompt, whatever I choose, however I choose to activate that's what I would use the card for. How about you?
Yeah, I love your suggestion. Similar, actually. Maybe if you're wanting to create a vision board, pulling that card out.
Mhm.
And again, like if we're looking into onto or like broadening our horizons, like everything is possible, right? If we think about life in that perspective, like you look out into the ocean, like you can imagine anything coming towards you. So if you're wanting to create something, because again, I believe the threes are really about creativity. What is it that you want to create? What is it that you want to manifest? So if you were interested in creating a vision board, maybe pulling out that card and, being inspired to do something like that.
So we've kind of covered that Three of Wands. What about the Three of Cups? Bonnie, do you want to talk to us about the Three of Cups?
The Three of Cups.
Yeah,
Another one of those cards that I love.
I know, me too.
Add to my collection of cards that I love in the tarot. It brings me great joy when I see the Three of Cups. And
I
I,
love that. It brings me great joy when I
right?
see the Three of Cups. Brilliant.
You're right. I didn't even plan that. But that's pretty much the meaning of the Three of Cups. I really think that it's this idea, this energy of coming together with loved ones. And loved ones can be anybody, but it's your people. It's those people that you really love to be around. It's being in community, but in this celebratory aspect of that, of like just having fun, being in celebration, enjoy, really being in that moment when you're with your people, right? Like your girlfriends or anybody who's your friend, your loved ones. It's being with the people who love and respect you the most, and that you're just with them for the sheer joy of being with them. So I see this card, could like as a girls' night out, or even just family get-togethers, families when they get together and they really have this sense of community and family and that joy of being together. Like that's a Three of Cups moment. So it's not just three people getting together, although it could signify that, but it's just that energy of love and relationships and just really being happy with the people that you're with and all sharing that, right? It's not one person's here and I don't really like hanging out with that person. Like you're with your people. So I that card reminds me to go out and have some fun. So what would you say,
Yeah.
Peter?
No, it's funny you mentioned the girls' night out, because I often think of this card as the card, if it was, in a modern deck, it could easily be called girls' night out.
Yeah.
And you use one of my favorite phrases to describe this card, which is when you talk about Three of Cups moments. So I would agree with all the things that you've said. The only thing I would enhance it to be situational as well. So
Mhm,
um, I I agree that when we seek out those Three of Cups moments, it means that everybody's on the same page of
mhm,
the bringing of joy and the celebration. But I also think that Three of Cups can mean those situations that also uniquely bring us a sense of joy and a sense of celebration where
Mm.
it might not necessarily be something that we're sharing in the moment, but it's a moment that brings us that unbridled idea of joy. I've actually
Mm.
posted from time to time on my Instagram page about moments of what I call a three of cups moments, and I'll just give an example. Only because there were three people, and then there were other people there. So I play in an '80s cover band, in a local '80s cover band, and we did a gig in I think it was 2022 when and my son plays in the band with me, and my daughter came on and guested for one song.
Mm.
So I was on stage with both my children, and I was like, somebody snapped a picture of, my
Oh.
daughter in front of the stage with a microphone, my son on one side of the stage on his stack of keys, and me on the other side. And we were all three of us in the forefront. And I posted, I'm sure it's still there, my three of cups moment. And it was because of the elation it brought me. And I mean, I made an assumption that for my kids, it was also a moment for them. But in the end, it didn't matter because it was a personal celebration. It brought me so much joy, to use the idea of cups. My cup overflowed. It was one of those kinds of moments. So, and to me, I think it really does a good job of exemplifying what brings us a three of cups kind of energy. So, if you may not be able to relate to that specific situation, but if you can think about, the emotion that would
Mhm.
bring for, a father who is a musician to be able to share that moment in a public space, with their children. I remember, kind of looking at somebody and saying, look, if you strike me down tomorrow, I'm all good now. I can say, oh, look, I'll be ending things on a moment of absolute and pure joy. So that's
Oh,
more
what a
story. It's
great
more of an
story.
anecdote or a story, but it
No,
probably
but
does
it's,
exemplify that.
yeah, I'm happy that you pointed that out. It doesn't have to be a planning of something of coming together. It can be that moment, right?
Mm,
That three of cups moment. So I'm thank you for pointing that out, right? Like it doesn't have to be a deliberate party or something that you're going to, but
mm,
in that moment.
yeah,
That's great. Oh,
yeah. Sorry,
I'm like,
sorry to be
oh,
pulling at people's heartstrings as we're talking about the three of cups. Go figure.
go right? Relationships,
Right? Exactly.
emotions.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Love.
it is a card. Funny enough, I talk about it being something individual, but it is often surrounded by that idea of outward celebration and good times and
Mhm.
party. It is that a card that does bring that out as well. So
Mhm.
if you were going to use it intentionally, or if you were going to use it in some way, how would you do that?
Girls' night out. Yeah, like if I wanted to plan a fun night out, and I think sometimes the older we get, the harder it is just to have those times where we come to. And I mean, you have young kids at home, they're in school, they have activities, you're driving everywhere. I think it's sometimes hard to put yourself in a position where you can plan just fun nights out. But I think that's important to really uh, make time for that whenever it's possible. So if I wanted to plan a fun night out with my friends or even my girls or, family members, then I could, pull out that card and inspire me to do something just for the fun of it, right? Not like, oh, let's go here because let's just do something because it's fun and we all love that. So I'm gonna be totally that's an easy one, but I think that's a great example of how I could use the three of cups to create something. What would what would you use it for, Peter?
So I'll call it a magical example. I would, and by that I mean, what a great talisman it would make if I was having, let's say, a party and I made
Mhm.
my own invitations or had invitations printed or sent out an evite or however I do it, and took a small image of the Three of Cups card and tucked it in the bottom corner or tucked it on the back,
Oh.
as the watermark, for example, on an invitation, or even as the cover picture on, you know, on an invite. So I'm thinking, if I'm being intentional on trying to bring
Mm.
people together and I'm trying to get that Three of Cups moment, why not physically add the image of the Three of Cups to whatever it is that I'm using to initiate that moment? So
Oh, I love that. Oh,
wait until my band has another gig. You're going to see the Three of Cups picture on the e-ticket somewhere, right?
I will hold you
So
to
yeah, you're gonna have to
that.
hold me to that one for sure. Just because it's hard. I'm trying to think of a deck that doesn't have an image where you look at that, go, wow, that's all about celebration and joy. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny because me and my girls joke about getting matching tattoos. They're coming of age where that, they're not there yet. Within a couple of years, they're like harassing me. And our last name means king in German. So my one daughter came up with the idea that we should all get crowns, like three crowns,
Wow.
right? Because,
Yeah.
and in my head, I was like, how can I turn those three crowns into the Three of Cups? Because I think about our little, me and them, that's three of us. And, generally on the cards, it's usually three women that are
Mhm.
depicted of all different
Mhm.
ages. And I kind of refer to them as like my Three of Cups. So like, how can I do a Three of Cups crown tattoo? So that might
Well,
be my inspiration
there you
of
go. Any tattoo artists that are listening, there you go. You got,
yeah.
the possibility of
Send
three
me some
clients.
sketches.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Oh,
So we
that's
we
amazing.
might, yeah, we have a few years to go. My youngest is like, when are we gonna do it? When are we gonna do it? So I'm like, okay, I need to breathe first. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for my baby to get a tattoo.
That's funny. That's funny.
Okay, Three of Swords. You want to tackle that, Peter?
No, but I will anyways. The Three of Swords, and I know we talked
Mhm.
about this in beforehand, because the image on the Three of Swords is is I think makes the card in some ways challenging to interpret, especially if we think about the idea of threes as being, harmonious, and although they sometimes can be about conflict, but if they're about harmony and they're about joy and they're about celebration, here we have a card that more often than not is depicted by three swords stabbed through a bloody heart. And if it's not a heart, then sometimes it's an animal of some kind, or it pays homage to Pamela Coleman Smith's image of the Rider Waite Smith. So,
Mhm.
and we've actually talked about this, 'cause I'm sure the card came up previously in a card draw where the concept of creativity, the idea that, if threes are about creation and swords are about our mental space, then the Three of Swords can often be about that mental narrative that we tell ourselves. So it might be, if it is about conflict, or often about jealousy, is often a word that's attributed to this card, the idea of a love triangle. If the grapple is not your cup of tea, then, if three is not welcome in your relationship, then the Three of Swords can present a challenge.
Mhm.
Then there are times when what the Three of Swords does is it says, check to see whether or not the challenge that you're perceiving is actually based in reality, and that it's not a construct in in your mind, in the space of swords. um the same thing, if you're thinking that the three is representing a disharmonious relationship, check and see whether or not that it's your perception that is making it disharmonious, and not necessarily reality that is making it kind of disharmonious.
Mhm.
I kind of wish that Pamela Coleman Smith hadn't gone to see the exhibit on the Solabusca. We'd probably all have much more clarity on that Three of Swords card if, she hadn't have been influenced by that deck. Because it's like an outlier as far as tarot cards go, because you're looking at it going, is that, how does it mean, even in the book that goes along with that deck, the original book by Arthur Waite, there's the link between the image and the meaning is
Mhm.
not quite there. So this one can be confronting and challenging. It can be confronting too if you use the Rider Waite or something like it, and you're working with somebody, you're working with yourself, and the card flips over. again, it can be a pretty drastic looking card. So keep that in mind that, the card as well, the image on the card might not necessarily represent reality. It might actually be, a film that, narrative that's spinning around in your head. What do you think? I think I said the same thing four different ways. Uh,
That's okay. Sometimes people need to hear the same message in a different context. So I'm okay with that. I agree with you. I feel like the imagery in the Three of Swords doesn't lend itself so much to a general meaning of what the three would be within that suit. But I do believe that if traditionally we're looking at that and if people relate to it as like healing or heartbreak or sorrow for whatever it is that they're going through, the mind plays a big role in that. So how can we heal our own thoughts? How can we heal our heartbreak based on the things that we tell ourselves? So if we are creating these narratives in our mind, if we're, reciting the same story over and over again about things that are hurtful or cause us sorrow, what can we do about that? So it does tie in with creation. If you're thinking about your thoughts as being this, you're creating your thoughts, right? We're the only ones who think our own thoughts. So they're based on your own creation, but really still having compassion for the complexity of this card, because a lot of times people see that as, sorrow or pain or some healing to take place. So when that card does show up, I do have compassion and grace for whatever it is that the person could be going through, but also again bringing it back to me, like this could be a time for healing. Like, what am I ready to heal, and how can I think about that from the perspective of the thoughts that I'm thinking, how I'm communicating, generally how I'm communicating to myself. Often the way we communicate to ourselves is not how we would communicate to other people. So and I think that ties in really nicely with the energy of the swords, right? In terms of communication. So yeah. That's my take on the Three of Swords and how that ties into the threes. So would you have something practical that you would
and
would you
and
intentionally pull this card for something?
yeah, I probably would. I intentionally when I intentionally pull the card, I probably would in a situation where I knew full well that my mind was sort of creating the obstacle for me. So, I think we have, and we've all had these moments where, our thoughts kind of run away with us. And then when it's not happening, we have these moments of lucidity. And then in that moment of lucidity, when we go, oh my goodness, like I'm really, like I'm getting carried away with this particular narrative. Um, I would I would use I would use the idea of the Three of Swords. So I might pull that Three of Swords out, swords, and I pull out a pen or a pencil or writing implement. And I've said this before that, the pen or the pencil can also represent a sword, since our words a um are live in the realm of air, in the realm of swords. And I try to introduce one, two, or possibly three of the other elements, because I think when we let our thoughts run away with us, there are a few things that are happening. One is we lack groundedness. So there's earth there that, is we're missing earth. So if I wanted to, I'd have the image of the card. I would write down the thoughts, stream of conscious, whatever. I take the piece of paper and I bury it.
Hmm.
Sometimes we miss initiative. It's like, you know what? We're getting stuck in our thoughts and we can't move forward. If that's what we needed more fire. What would I do? Well, you can imagine I would write it down and then I would burn it.
Burn it.
And then if it was, I need to move on, I need to emotionally let something go, I need to introduce water, I would write it down, crumple it, and I would drown it. I would put it in water. And if I needed all three, then I would introduce all three. I'd write it down, I'd get it wet, I'd throw it in the fire, then I'd take the ashes and I'd bury them to try and bring balance. So I and I, again, just thinking sometimes about how the images that are on a card and the ideas that are behind them can prompt us to act in ways that allow us to introduce the other elements or the other things that are missing. Because as both Bonnie and I talked about, the Three of Swords really is a very air-based mental card. That it's an abundance of of thought, of words, of air energy. And the Three of Swords has no earth, no fire, and no water. So again, my actions would introduce, or the suggestion would be to do something that introduces one, two, or all three. I don't know. How about you?
Wow, Peter, that was very deep. I have to say.
Don't say that while I'm taking a drink.
I'm sorry. I'm
That
very
was deep.
impressed. I'm very impressed by that. Wow. Wow, I can't really follow that up with any
Well,
my
I have mentioned this before. Like magical work with the tarot, I find that really it has a sweet spot there for me, because I think it lends itself well, and I used this word earlier in the episode, as a talisman, because it
Mhm.
can help solidify things that are hard to make solid. That kind of concepts get represented in images, and then we can just do something with the image. So
Yeah, and it's a powerful tool.
it really is.
What I we're pretty much on the same page.
Okay.
And I have a pen in my hand. How
Look at
funny.
that.
Um,
Yeah. You're
I would
very punny.
definitely
You're
use
very
it.
punny today. Very punny today.
Wow, we're just on a roll. Um, I would also use it for a journaling exercise in terms of if you are feeling like dealing with some emotions, some, really heavy feelings, I would pull that card out. And again, journal your thoughts, your feelings. You want to write a letter. Like there's so much that we can do, right? With our writing. You could write a letter to somebody that you never intend on giving to them. And quite often that's a form of release. You could write a letter of forgiveness to yourself, like so many different things. So I definitely believe that journaling would be a really powerful tool to use with that card. The other thing, when you were talking, even before you mentioned the elements, I was thinking if you did pull the three of swords intentionally, and then you could say like, what element do I need to help me in this situation, right? So pulling a card and whatever came up, like if you pulled a cups card, okay, well, nurturing is really important for me. How can I bring water, that water-based energy into my system? If you pulled the pentacles in terms of the earth, maybe I need to go outside, get some of that earth energy. Or if it's fire, right? A lot of times when we're in our sorrow, sometimes we just need to take action and move, right? Because we're stuck. So, yeah, like using that card almost as a significator and then pulling another card to see what energy you can bring in to help you deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. But I think it's genius and you could go one step further and use Peter's example of if you did pull a cups card, okay, then drown that, whatever it is that you're writing, like go one step further. So I think we have a workshop here, Peter.
We might.
We may have to do this as a workshop. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
There you go. So if you're
Okay.
listening, and and Bonnie and I propose a workshop, and if around some of the magical works and practical activities with the tarot, if that would be of interest to you, put it in the comments.
And you heard it here
There you
first.
go. You heard it here first. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, should we move on to the
Let's
pentacles?
go. Let's go on to the pentacles.
Okay, lightening things up. We were heavy.
We're
Now
heavy.
we're going to go a little bit more
Yeah.
not so heavy. So, 3 of Pentacles, again, a really great card in terms of collaboration. So, I see this card as people coming together and sharing ideas to create something like mutually, like everybody has a say. Like when the 3 of Pentacles shows up, it's like, okay, there's going to be some type of collaboration in terms of creating something, whether that's a project, the start of something, but making sure that your voice is heard because your voice is just as important as everybody else's. So people really coming together in community. It could also be about finding community for you. So if there's something, if this shows up as something that's going to support you to move forward. And you're like, well, I don't really know if I want to start a project. It could be that you really need community right now. So finding like-minded people, finding a hobby, and then going out and seeking other people to work with just to do that. So it's collaboration, it's working together, idea sharing, but of again, that mutual respect, everybody coming together for the greater good of something else. Um, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah,
Did I do okay?
yeah, did fine. I'm trying to think of anything to say other than ditto. Um, and I can't. So, the idea of it being really collaborative and teamwork focused.
Mhm,
Um,
teamwork for sure.
yeah, it and it's the act of doing something because it is pentacles. So I always think it supports a group of artisans, for example.
Mm,
But it really has a tangible end product of some kind. It doesn't have to be something that's material, but if it's collaborative, then it's usually collaborative with a purpose. It's like, we're
mhm,
going to do this, we're going to collaborate in this way. Maybe we're forming a running club. Well, the idea
mhm.
of creating the running club is that at one point we're going to run a 10K or a half marathon, that we do this together, that
Yeah.
we do the work together, and that we have some kind of an outcome. But now you touched on all the stuff. I really have nothing else to add. So nothing else to add. Where where might we use this card if we're looking, you know,
Like
practical?
from a practical
I'm
aspect.
so glad you're going first here. I really am.
I know, because you're stealing all my ideas.
I'm not stealing your idea. I don't
No,
have
you're
one here.
not. We don't even
That's
know what each other's going to say. That's why
I'm
this is
sitting
so
there going,
funny.
Three of Pentacles. I'm not sure. So you go ahead and you go first.
Well, I'm just going to state the obvious. Like if you're wanting to build a community, for example,
Mm.
um, pull out the Three of Pentacles and use that again. I love how you say like using it as a talisman, like using it as your source of inspiration for, okay, what kind of community do I want to build? Who do I want to invite to join this community? So if there's something that you're wanting to do, but wanting to do that with other people, maybe not knowing how you're going to get that started, then use that card intentionally, leave it out, and then, see what signs come up. I think when you do have that visual aid, it's always that reminder that, oh yeah, that thing is possible for me. So I know that's maybe a lame way to use it, but that works with the Three of Pentacles. So I would say creating community, starting a project with other people, starting a band, since you're very into the whole music
Yeah.
world,
And that's-
starting a tarot group.
There
I
you
don't
go.
know, like so
There
many
you go.
things, right? It doesn't have to be something work related. It could be something too that just brings people together.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I had really no ideas, and then you brought together the obvious. So I'll look at this. What I'll do then is I'll look at this energy from a teaching perspective. So for
Mm,
those of you who are learning about the tarot, then try this as an exercise. Take the Three of Pentacles out and create a community. Draw three other cards, like you can either
mm,
random or intentionally, and put them
mm.
together in a community and pretend that the cards are talking to one another. So, you've got three cards, doesn't matter. It could be the Hierophant, Seven of Swords, and, the King of Pentacles. And have them kind of pretend that they're in an environment that's been sort of facilitated by your Three of Pentacles card, and make them interact with each other. What might the King of Pentacles say, to the Hierophant? And
Mm.
what might the card say to the Seven of Swords? How might they interact? Who would be the outlier in that card? Who would be the support in that card? Who would be the grounding energy in that card? So that was me thinking on the fly, around what we could do, because this one kind of is, other than the obvious, I was kind of stuck. So I wanted to offer something fresh. Take that one. I would say take it or leave it. But I was thinking sometimes those activities, around how we might be able to get cards to interact can also help too when we're working with multiple cards, because cards do interact with one another, and we're sometimes much more comfortable imagining how people will interact. So if we sort of personify the cards in some ways, sometimes we can make it easier for them to we can make that interaction, understanding the interaction between two or three cards better. No, that's there's
I
that's
think that's a great idea. And so something that I know about and something that I don't often do. So that's a good reminder to do that. The other thing that I thought about too with the Three of Pentacles is cooperation, right? So if you're needing to cooperate with somebody or you're in a position where maybe that might be lacking, intentionally pulling that card and being, how can I be more cooperative or what can I do to make the situation more cooperative? Then that might be another but and I love your idea of bringing those three cards together. How would they communicate? How would those three people cooperate together, right? And then a lot of times when you're like role playing like that, you can really come up with great
Of course.
solutions. So I think that's a fantastic idea.
Well, and they can be helpful for times when, I think of a card like the Tower. Well, if the Tower were personified, who would cooperate with the Tower? I imagine some poor child, three kids sitting around trying to build blocks, and whoever the Tower happens to be waits for things to get, at a particular height and then smashes them, to the ground. So they'd be a destructive power. How would a more constructive power in the tarot, a card that represents a more constructive energy,
Mhm.
interact with a card like the Tower? And when you do things like that, you can really kind of broaden how you interpret the cards, because we rarely, I mean, I know we do it and we're going to do it right now, but we don't often work with only one card. Where the tarot really shows its powers when the cards interact together. So,
Mhm.
speaking of a one card, activity, I think we're at that stage of the show. I think of the episode.
To pull a card.
I think we are. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna shuffle.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
It doesn't matter. Well, you know what? Why don't you go first if you don't mind? Because
Okay.
I'm actually using a deck that is all set in order, so I'm gonna have to shuffle it a little bit. I'm actually gonna go with Bonnie and I talk usually beforehand just so that we're not using the same deck. And I actually, in honor, it as a thank you to Janine Worthington, who was our guest in the last episode. I'm actually going to use her deck again without her here. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
you're
give it.
brave.
I know I'm brave. The last time, it didn't have to be brave because I had the deck creator right there to help me out. This time, I'm not going to. So.
Although I was a little stressed. I mean, she's lovely, but I was like, oh my goodness, I'm interpreting her card with
Okay.
her
I
here.
know.
So,
I know.
okay. Okay. So, I'm going to use Tarot of the Witch's Garden by Sasha Graham.
Okay.
And a spoiler alert, we
I
might
was
have
gonna say.
another guest coming on our show fairly soon. I'm not going to give too much away. Okay. Um, I don't put my decks back in order because I am not a good shuffler. So I don't have to shuffle it that much. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I pulled the Five of
Okay.
Pentacles. Oh, sorry about my finger here. I have like a massive bruise on my finger if you're watching. I apologize for that. Okay, so the Five of Pentacles, this in this deck, it is very similar to what we would see in the Rider-Waite Smith version. It has two people, it's outside, they're in the cold, they're walking past what looks like a church, and it's lit up in the background. So, Five of Pentacles. When I see the Five of Pentacles, fives, which we're going to get to in a few episodes if we're going in order, are always about change. So in the Five of Pentacles, it can be a hard card that shows up in a reading because the imagery shows almost this idea of lack or needing support in some way. And that's exactly what's happening. People are walking outside and it's a struggle, it's a journey, it's freezing cold. But what they don't see is that there's support right beside them. And quite often you do see an image of a building where there's a light on in the building, the people are walking and they don't even see that. So when I see the Five of Pentacles again, I bring it back to myself where my headspace is. And Bonnie, where's your focus right now? Is your focus on lack? Or is it, so, and when I get that and I check in and I'm like, okay, I'm focusing more on the lack of having something that I want as opposed to the desire of having that or what support I might need. So this could be a call to you that support is available to you, but it's okay to seek support. There's always, always, always support for you. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are needing support, then definitely seek that. And it could also be a check-in for like where the mind is, because you have the ability to turn that around. So quite often, and I mean, we were talking about that earlier with the Three of Swords, our mind is can be our greatest conflict sometimes with the things that we're thinking. So if we're wrapped up in this idea of a lack mentality, how can we flip that around to appreciate the things that we have now, seek the support so that we can get out of that space? So I know some people might interpret that a little bit differently. Some people see that as, maybe health conditions. I don't read that way.
Right.
But if you are feeling, health wise, not so great, well, where's the support that you can seek to help you to feel better? So again, always based on like the ability that you have to make changes and to get that support that you need. So that's what I would say about the Five of Pentacles.
Yeah. It's it is one of my favorite interpretations. Actually, the Five of Pentacles is the Five of Earth in the Gaian Tarot, and it's somebody
Mm,
buried. They've actually buried themselves. They've hunkered down in what looks like a cave. It almost looks like a beaver
mm,
hut, like it's a mound of leaves. They've just buried themselves into the earth. And I was thinking, this it is a card at times of we really just want to kind of hunker down and hide, because for the reason you mentioned, that idea of that lack of that deficit feeling. And because it's pentacles, I'll say even the actions based on in
mhm,
deficit, or kind of that using our hands or working with deficit. And I used to see this from time to time in my previous work as an educational leader, where assessment would happen through the idea of deficit, where it would focus on what someone cannot do. And it used to drive me crazy as an educator of young people, because I'd be like, why on earth would we want to focus on telling a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old on what they can't do? Let's focus on what they can do. Let's move away from a practice of deficit and move towards a practice of abundance. And sometimes that's what the Five of Pentacles does. It highlights that we're in a space of a practice of deficit, or a practice
mm,
of lacking, where and it our thinking has gone beyond the point, because I often think our thinking would be in the realm of swords. It's gone beyond the point of thinking that we have nothing, and it's like acting and doing like as if we have
mm,
nothing. And it's taking that check in, and being, are we truly in, let's honor where we're at. Maybe we
mhm,
really are in a space where our resources are limited. Then perhaps what we need to do is adjust our action to meet the resources that we have available. And that's where I sometimes draw that idea of the light in the church, that the hope isn't necessarily that help is on the way. It's that an adjustment to our routine, an adjustment to how we, so for example, if this showed up and it was somebody feeling like it was a health issue, then it might be a change in how we approach our health. So it might
mhm,
be our own health routines, including our own desire or ability to be able to seek mental health, or sorry, medical help, or health help is often represented in the Five of Pentacles. I know that that might also be a different way to go about it. I really do resonate with the idea of that deficit approach, because I do think that the Five of Pentacles focuses on that. I move away from the idea of a mental construct, because I don't see that as being in the realm of pentacles. But it's hard,
mhm.
right? Because our entire existence is kind of in our head. So even when we talk about the Three of Cups, it's like, well, I in my head I'm celebrating, and like, so our mind really does sort of drive the ship here. So anyway,
Well, I think, yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. And for me, I think it's the thoughts of lacking something
yeah,
material in our
yeah,
lives, right? But I also, when I think about pentacles, I think about how we view abundance
mhm,
and also gratitude. So I always bring it back to like, what can you be grateful
Mhm.
for, what you have now, right? To build that abundance, because seeing that card, it's almost like there's that lack of
Mhm.
abundance that we're feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes a simple activity when the Five of Pentacles shows up is are simple acts of gratitude. It's those gratitude statements that help kind of pull us up and feel a little bit more grateful because we're stuck in that I don't have, or oh my goodness, look what I'm missing, look what I'm missing. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give Janine's deck a try. I know what's gonna happen too. I'm gonna pull a card that I'm always struggling with, and it's gonna be even double struggle because it's got three meanings.
I know what you're thinking.
All right. Of course, right? I got to pull a major arcana card.
Is it the
So
moon?
no, no, no. Thank goodness it is not the moon. It's the card that comes after.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
it's it's sun judgment. So it's the card
Okay.
that's represented by the sun with sort of sun and judgment. So like if I'm, it's called the sun, so I'll think sun first. So sun is always the idea of your light, like, and it's an opportunity for you to be able to shine your light. It's the embodiment of the true self. When I think of the representation of the sun from an astrological perspective, it is your radiant self. It is the personification of joy. It's the personification perhaps of the optimism that was seen in the star card. It is success, it's growth, but it's growth via visibility, but being seen. It is growth via fire, right? Being like in that inspirational, I'm doing well. And then it sits in the space, thanks, Janine,
I know,
with
and you're making
with
this hard for
judgment, right?
me. You
With
realize that because I have to
but
add on to.
but the idea of adding judgment to this card is when we see this sun energy, we are often also faced with the judgment of, is this enough? And I've said this before with the judgment card. The judgment card says you are enough. So I would see this card as the blend between this is what I am, this is the sun, this is me shining myself forward, and making sure that I also understand that whatever it is, whatever I'm sending out there, it's enough. So that's the message I've got from the interpretation. And if Janine watches this episode and she's got something to add, hopefully she'll do
Give him
that.
an A plus,
Do,
Janine.
do you have do you have anything to add in that?
No, not really. I see the sun exactly the same. And judgment I see the same. So I love that. The energy of those cards coming together. So realizing your worth and shining
Mhm.
your light and coming into judgment, which I often look at as like removing the mask and being you, right? Like now stepping into your true potential, like your purpose without trying to be something for somebody else. Like this is your calling now. So I do think that's a beautiful energy to be in, that yeah, you've accepted that I have this light, I'm going to shine. Only success and joy can come from this, and now I'm moving into like my purpose, and I'm not afraid now to be me, right? So I think that's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
great card to pull.
Yeah. Yeah. When I saw it at first, I was like, oh, the sun. And then I'm like, my first thought was, oh my goodness, is it moon sun? And then when I saw judgment, I was like, okay, it's maybe not quite as bad, but yeah.
Well, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, he pulled the
So the
moon.
moon. No, 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 I didn't. Although
You dodged the bullet.
I am coming to peace with the moon. I'm, better understanding of the moon card as we go. So,
That's good, Peter.
all right.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so do you want to let people know where they can find you, what you have going on?
Sure. Well, I would say what I have going on would be a run, don't walk, to my website in the relaunch that's going on. So by the time we post this, you'll still have a couple of days to take advantage of a code launch 20, which gives you 20% off all my courses, including the bundled price. And I'm also offering what I'm calling is a taste of tarot, which is a 30-minute tarot reading for $30 Canadian. So if you've never had a reading with me and you'd like to see what that's like, you've never had a tarot reading at all and you'd like to see what that's like, again, I would say run, don't walk, because this is for a limited time, really only available until the end of the weekend that this will be posted. Um, yeah, that's what I've got. That's what I've got available going on at this point in time. How about you, Bonnie?
Awesome. Don't really have much going on. I'm coming off a really busy season, but if people want to find me, you can go to my website at, well, it's breathewithbonnie.com. I post anything that I have going on, but you can see all my services there. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I am at Breathe with Bonnie.
Yeah. Oh, I think I said go to my website, but I didn't say what it
But did
was.
you say what your website
No.
was?
So
No.
it's peterwhitetarot.com. It's so also where my Instagram and Facebook profiles are. Same thing, Peter White Tarot. So,
And we'll have all of that posted in the show notes. So, well, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter. It is always a pleasure for us to talk tarot and be with you. So we really appreciate you being here. And until next time, see you later.